Hi, Abbey.
Hello.
And welcome to Walk in the Park.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Thank you for having me.
Me too, very excited. We're gonna walk in Oslo at Aker Brygge and get to know your story.
Sorry.
And today our guest is Abbey Lin, founder and CEO of Fortifai.
Hello.
And Fortifai is on the mission to make ESG compliance simple and accessible.
Yes.
And in Walk in the Park podcast, we usually invite founders to share about their journey, what formed them before starting a company, what inspired them, and also how they do things, how they make decisions, how they build culture and companies and achieve the big mission they usually have. So let's walk.
Yes, great. I'm excited.
Perfect. And yeah, my first question is usually, do you have walk and talk habit?
I don't have a walk and talk habit. I do have a walk in silence habit, usually every day with my dog. So I don't listen to music. I don't do anything. I just walk in my neighborhood for about 20 minutes in the morning. And I try to actually look at trees and look at greenery to help with my nervous system.
Great habit. But you don't do with your team?
No, I
Walking
don't.
meetings,
You know, my
discussions.
husband actually does that a lot with his team, but I haven't. I've worked with a lot of remote teams. I think that's one reason. And I'll admit that I am a little bit of a weather, either snob or scared of the weather being from California. And the Norwegian weather doesn't usually cooperate with me and my abilities for walk and talks. But when the weather's like this, I'm very happy to do a walk and talk.
Awesome, then I'm lucky that you're here today. So let's go to the journey with Fortifai. So how did you get the idea of starting Fortifai? What was your inspiration? And yeah, tell us the story.
Yeah, so I grew up in Silicon Valley. My dad was a software engineer, first generation, born in the US. And I took the corporate path. I think that's a typical immigrant story where you kind of go a safe corporate path. And I kind of climbed the corporate ladder for about 20 years. I worked at KPMG, I worked at Microsoft. In the last corporate role, I was the chief ESG and integrity officer at a publicly listed company. And after 20 years of kind of climbing the corporate ladder to the top, I realized I kept seeing the same issues over and over again within the sustainability sector. And I just felt like, okay, now what do? I just need to come and fix it.
And the timing was right?
The timing
You
was
felt
right.
because of the regulations and like things happening, or for you personally as well, both?
It was both. I think it was both realizing, you know, my corporate career, I wasn't interested in pursuing it anymore. And at the same time, yes, the regulations were changing. I've worked in sustainability and compliance for the last 20 years. And I saw that there was a lot more, I would say probably the most amount of interest at that period when I jumped.
So after switching from the corporate and like 20 years doing that thing and building career, was it easy for you? Was it like, I just do it, I have a feeling it will be great? Or was it like a lot of like internal discussions with you?
I would say in the beginning it was, you know, to kind of leave a corporate career after 20 years, you really need to think, do I want to do this? It's a different lifestyle change, both, you know, financial and pace and uncertainty that you have from corporate. So I definitely had a debate, you know, for I would say at least a couple of months, like, should I do this or not? But once I made the jump, it was like, all right, you're in and you kind of need to go all in. So it hasn't been as much then.
And you never regret since then?
Oh gosh, I can't. I think any kind of founder would be kind of naive or like untruthful if you don't have these like horrible days where you're like, what did I do? You know, I had a really comfortable corporate job and suddenly I've done this. But I've also not sure I would go back to corporate after what I've been through because of the excitement, everything that you learned and the opportunities in this space. So I don't regret leaving. I don't see myself going back to corporate. But I'm not saying it's an easy ride as a founder.
And not for everyone, as
Yes.
many people mention.
Yeah.
During those days when things are hard, when it's difficult, when it's tough, when setbacks or your energy is down, what do you do to pick yourself up?
I sleep a lot.
Smart.
I go to bed, I sleep a lot. I have 3 kids, so you kind of just have to keep moving. You can't really just, I would say, sit around. You kind of have to move forward. I have a very supportive husband that I can talk to and get advice, and he's very positive in the way that he thinks and looks at things. So I would say friends also, you know, being able to talk to friends and kind of get it out, and really great support network. So yeah, that's what I focus on.
And what about, I heard from several founders switching from corporate career to starting a company, that they've planned for that. They've planned and they had the deadline. Like, I'll do that. I have, I don't know, reduce my consumption. I'll do some money. And like I planned for example, 3 or 6 months. And if I don't get the first customer, if I don't get to that point, then I go back.
Yeah.
Have you had anything like this? Or you just...
I kind of jumped into it, but I've always had a plan plan, like, I read the book Quit before I started my founder's journey, and it was a good reminder. And I've been on boards of startups that have maybe stayed around too long. Like when they weren't getting the traction they needed, they kind of just dragged it out. So it was always in my attention, like I would quit when the traction is not there. And luckily I haven't had to do that just yet.
So tell us about that, the traction. From what I know about your story, you're pretty quick and moving things and like building it, and you got tractions pretty quick as well. Yeah. And it seems like almost it was so easy for you. So tell us about that. How was that? What were the first steps when you started a company?
I think that because I had worked in corporate for so long, I had a very big network. So that helped also in terms of being able to jump in very quickly. I think the second thing is because I knew the problem space so well, having been a budget owner and also having a consultant, that I felt that I was able to target the need very quickly with the corporations because I knew them. Mm-hmm. So adding the network and also understanding their needs. And then I think also because of I was quite known in the field, so I think a lot of companies are willing to take the chance on me because they said, well, even if the technology fails, at least we've worked with Abbey and we get some consulting out of that. So I think that helped reduce some of the fears and allow me to go forward faster.
Yeah. And following up on network is, I know it's one of the topics you really like as well. I heard the episode with Claudia you had, and I personally also passionate about that and really believer of that. What do you think, is it a smart way to use time to build network before they start a company, while they're starting a company? What would your advice be? You kind of had the network already, it's a big help for you, as you say, but to the young founders maybe coming out from university, how should they do that?
Yeah, I think network is, the saying network is your net worth. And I do believe that. I think especially in the startup space, when your first your first customers are usually the ones that that trust you already, that they don't think that you're going to run off with their money, or that they believe in you as a person. The bigger network that you have, the more likely you'll succeed, or at least be able to have a much faster start, which is so important in the startup space.
But people who are really fresh in the community, who hadn't done this before, like young and from the university, do you have any concrete advice how they can do that, how they can approach it and start building network?
Yeah, I think you can do it both in university. There's so many networking events. And the thing about Norway, it's super small. So I would say, and I've said this also to immigrants coming into the country who want to make a network, is there's so many different events like Oslo AI, there's Mad Lab. There's so many meetups that you can go to start meeting people and getting the connections. And I would start there. There's so many, I would say, scale-ups and startups. That's a really great way. If you also see this within the investor base, they tend to try to invest in employees that have been in the scale-ups before, right? So if you can get in and network with those scale-ups or those growing startups that are already getting some traction, getting that onto your CV, volunteering, interning with them, and that through that work experience, you'll get more of a network, and then you can use that and leverage that.
Building a company and building team. You were talking about taking chances on people, and that you've been experienced that yourself when somebody is taking chances in you, right? And you get the role. And what about you now as a leader, building your own company? How do you do that? How do you take chances on people, and how do you build your team and find the best?
Yeah, I think one, just being international, I tend to take chances on more people than the standard and the different average thinking. So, and also just being a diverse person, I've always been kind of the minority in even in the corporate sector, both being an immigrant here. So I've always enjoyed diversity and the way of thinking because I think differently myself. So for me, it's, I have three people from Singapore right now working with me, and it's just so nice to have that diversity. So for me, it's more about, I would say, personality traits. Are you able to move fast? Are you able to think out of the side of the box? Are you able to kind of give it all and not a typical 9 to 5? So those are the kind of things that I look for. But I wouldn't say I think hiring is always such a tough thing to do. I think one, especially in Norway, given the regulatory challenges of employment within Norway for startups. And then at the same time, a startup itself, it has such less capital than like a corporate, right? So you really want someone who's willing to kind of take a pay cut, but work extra hard and to
with less money to try to
find that person that's willing to do that. So you really have to find that right motivated people, and it's not necessarily easy in Norway.
But also I think it's about the talent of a founder, because you should really sell the vision. It's early stage, as you say, not that much money yet and kind of a new company, but you want the best people. So how do you sell the vision? How do you do that? Like, what are your personal tricks and tips? You mentioned several founder traits.
Yeah, it's hard, right? It gets easier as you have more traction, I'll say. If you're just one person who's kind of not very well known, it's like somebody really needs to, I would say, be passionate about the cause that you're doing or the niche that you're managing. For me, it's like, what kind of traction, what kind of investors that we have. We have some really well-known investors on our cap table, and people want to be connected with them, and that gives a little bit of I would say, they feel a little bit safer seeing that we have these investors on our cap table. So how do we sell the vision? I think it's much easier when you have more traction, as I said, so that you see what customers are you already have, and they're like, oh wow, you've been able to get these customers, then there's some kind of validation that you're not going to go under in the next few months. So I think it has to come from the passion of the founder in the beginning.
And you have a lot of passion?
I do have a lot of passion, especially within the sustainability sector. I've been working in it for 20 years when it was called corporate responsibility. So in me, it's in the core of what I believe in, so it comes out.
But what about, as I understood from what I learned about you, continuously learning is one of your main values. What is your main learning so far from being a founder?
A few things. I think I've enjoyed being a founder because, exactly like you said, I've learned so much more than I have, I would say, in this last 2.5 year period, whether it's working with the accountant, registering the company, setting up the invoices, trying to understand the shareholding structure and all of these different things that I wouldn't have done if I stayed in corporate. I would have worked in my subject matter expertise and kind of knew exactly what I was doing. So I think that's been really great. But I think as a founder, it's just that you have to go all in. You have to be perpetually optimistic and a little naive. I would say the naivety is so real in founders. Kind of like you have to, if you knew how much, I think Jensen Huang said this, if you knew how much crap that you would have to go through, maybe a lot of people wouldn't do it. So you have this naivety every day, you kind of forget, and then something else pops up and then you'll deal with it, and something else pops up, but you kind of keep going because you don't realize what is ahead of you. Many
founders also mentioned they kind of love it.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think you have to love it. I think if you don't love it or you can't manage it, then you probably shouldn't be a founder, and then the corporate environment is better for you. And that's why I do have a lot of corporate friends being like, oh, it seems like, on paper you're doing really well. I want to do the same thing. And I'm like, are you sure you want to do the same thing? Because it's not as glamorous as it looks from the outside, because you are constantly dealing with problems, constantly putting out fires, chicken with the head cut off, trying to understand your priorities of the day. It's hard when you have to do everything in such a small team.
And what about learnings about your personal side? You mentioned that, you learned how to start a company, many things, and naivety, but also the personal experience. What you've learned about yourself, which is surprising you, and you didn't know that about yourself before you started a company?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I didn't realize in a corporate, and this, I think, goes back to the nervous system and why I take these walks and try to reduce my nervous system, is that when you're in corporate, really, you could totally screw up and it would be fine. There would be a lawyer there to save you. You're not going to take down the company. Your company will be okay. Maybe you'll get fired. Maybe you'll get a disciplinary action. In a startup, if you really screw up, it could be the end of your company. And I think that really affects your nervous system. And that was a learning that I've had. I have been quite protected in corporate world. Suddenly I'm in this unprotected environment. How do I manage this? And I think as I would say, been an entrepreneur longer, I'm able to manage it. But I would say the first year, it was quite stressful. Am I going to survive? Am I going to get a customer? Am I going to get VC funding? And that was very stressful. And luckily one of our VCs is an impact VC from Belgium. And they really stress, I would say, work-life balance and founder strength, because they want us to last a really long time. Yeah. So they had a coach with us working with our nervous system. And that's where I've learned kind of looking at the trees and kind of calming down and walking to have that marathon. But I would say I'm not perfect, but I think that's kind of one of these learnings I don't think I would have had if I hadn't left corporate, because I was in such a safe environment.
Very interesting. What about, since you mentioned investors, one quote I have from Sagar from Runway Boo suggested to change some things. And he said, I expected them to come back in like half a year or something to come back. But then Abbey came like 2 weeks later, and also at the same time she was like back and forth Silicon Valley, Norway, and done lots of, we were so impressed. So then we ended up investing. And this is a very fascinating story. So tell us about that. How was your approach to that after that meeting with Runway Boo and Sagar?
I think one of the things is like, you know, a startup pre-VC money and post-VC money, right? There is a difference in it, in that when you don't have VC money, you are kind of running a little bit blind, especially if this is your first startup, right? You kind of maybe set up shareholder structure is kind of incorrect, not in the right way, or you're not sure how to do, you know, certain things, right? And that's what one of the things I've kind of appreciated having now VC investors, because they can give guidance. Every time I have some kind of strategic, I have somebody to go to, where I didn't necessarily have that beforehand. And so when I went to Sagar and kind of, you know, pitching the company, talking about it, and he just saw some kind of interesting points. He's like, no, you need to do this if we were going to invest in you. And that was helpful, because I'm like, oh, that's great. That's learning that I didn't know. So that's information that I'm like, okay, I understand I should be doing this better. So I just went and fixed it. And it was like, once I had that guidance, why not just execute on it and come forward? And at the same time, I was going back and forth from Silicon Valley to where I'm from. So I was, having meetings at 3 a.m., trying to fix this with the time difference. But I didn't realize that until after he invested and he said that was a contributing factor. So it's really great to see that.
Really cool story. But are you always really fast on executing? Is this your thing?
It is my thing. I think it actually comes from Microsoft. I worked at Microsoft for almost 5 years, and it's like, when people respond to emails, you respond very quickly. It's like a very fast-paced culture, and also working from KPMG. And I also just think being Californian and like we move fast, we talk fast, we execute quickly. So that is definitely a thing that I have. And I think it's something that, like, I saw a quote, it doesn't matter how smart your idea is, it's how fast you execute it. And so that's really where I come from.
Another question to that, you mentioned the learning. You look at that suggestion from Sagar, oh, that's a great learning, let's do it. This is a part of founder mindset. And we talk a lot about founder mindset. What is that? Where is it coming from? How do we develop that? What is your thought on that? On what founder mindset is? Like learning, always been learning and curious to learn is one thing. What else do you feel is you can call founder mindset, and you have it?
I think you have to be willing to live with instability or unclarity. I think some of the struggles, especially from corporates, from people from corporate, is they want to see the strategy come out. They want to see the execution plan. They want to see the 5-month plan on what you're going to do in the KPIs. And as a typical founder, like you're saying, it's putting out fire. So like you can have a great KPI, but it's going to go out the door. And I think where people struggle in the founder one is they're not able to adapt to that movement that quickly, and they're kind of holding on to something. So I think that's also something that, like Sagar says, like I'm able to adapt very quickly to the changing scenarios, changing regulatory pressures, changing different things. You have to be able to pivot your business. And I think that if you're too held on to your strategy or like the way you see things, because you're only one person in this bigger ecosystem. You have to be able to take guidance and learn from other people to see maybe you need to change the way that you work to the environment around you.
Following up on changing and adapting to change and doing that quick, it's about also pivoting, and that's a big topic there too in the community. Do you have in your mind now an example during these 2 years of building Fortifai about an important pivot which really helped you to stay above, kind of to keep flowing? Have you had anything?
Gosh, there's been a lot of, I would say, mini pivots as you learn, the customer base and what they need and the information that they have, and then you pivot your product on it. I would say, around right now, sustainability, the regulations are changing, so you need to be on top of the regulations and see where the business opportunities are. So, there was one big regulatory change in March timeframe that affected a lot of the sustainability companies. And from that, luckily we were still early on, so we hadn't really invested heavily and had to change our big business strategy. But we could have, if we had been kind of stubborn and nope, I'm going to do it this way and just continue that path, we could have been on another direction. And instead, I took, 2 weeks talking to our investors, talking to different people in the industry, and say, okay, what direction do we want to go? And then we kind of shifted our product and started building towards the new regulatory change. So that would be a pivot, but luckily we weren't so deep into it. But I think you have to be ready for that.
What is your favorite part of being an entrepreneur? I have a feeling that you a lot in touch with the customers and have a lot of dialogues with customers and probably enjoy that part.
Yeah.
Or what is your favorite part of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think when you see that you're solving a problem for a customer that they need, and I think for me, when you're just saying that, like, you know, solving for a problem, it's because I've been in a corporation and I've been a budget holder trying to buy a software or something that didn't totally solve my problem, you know, because maybe they didn't work in the sector, haven't had the experience that of implementing it. So I think I enjoy building. I enjoy creating efficiency. I think that's a big thing about the technology. It's like, why am I building it? Because I think this is something that can scale to a lot of different companies, and as a result, scale the impact that it can make. So I think it's that idea of being able to create something that's replicable and that can go across all SMEs and then also have a big impact through that scaling. So it's the building, and then seeing that the customers resonate with this is like really great.
Yeah, but how do you find the balance? Some people mention listen to the customers as much as possible, but at the same time don't do everything they're asking about, because then you will never scale. Do only scalable things. How do you find balance?
Yeah, it is a balance, and I think it depends on, like, I would say, where you are in the company. Because I'll be honest, like, when you're first starting out, sometimes you need to do what the customer wants because you want to maintain the customer, right? But and you also have to use that to learn and understand, okay, what do you want to build and not? But I think some companies do that for too long. And at one point, like, you know, we did that in the beginning, being like, okay, what do we want? We need to understand that. But I think, one, I understand the sector really well. So sometimes even more than the customer, if they don't have sustainability staff within their team. But at the same time, I also understand budget constraints, having been a budget owner. So I've said to customers, they're like, oh, can you do this? And, you know, can you build an integration for this and this? And then I've actually said no, because I know you can't afford this. You know, like, if you want me to build an integration, you need to be able to commit to the budget, because at the end I have a company run. So it's having these hard conversations. But I do think I can say that because I have a customer base, so I can say no. But if I were trying to build customer one, then I might be more...
Yeah. Do you remember what was your feeling when you got first paying customer sign? What was that personal feeling for you?
Yeah, it was a good feeling. It's like validation, right? It's a validation. We had actually customer prepay before we had our product out there. Yeah, so, and that's a validation that the need is there, right? So that was really great feeling.
Talking about celebration and success, people often talk about luck in that sense too. Like, it's just you were lucky. And what is success looks like for you with Fortifai, and where do you see yourself in 5 years?
That's a good. It's hard for me. I think success. You know, I had tiger parents growing up. You know, and the always the raising the bar of success, and it's never good enough. And I think a lot of founders probably have this issue in that, and in terms of, like, kind of over striving for everything, right? So for me, success is that Fortifai is a brand name across Europe. All the small, medium-sized companies, you know of it and are using it, and that we are able to scale and do what the EU wants in terms of the green revolution, that all companies are participating in it. So that's really, I would love to have that in 5 years.
And about your personal mission, it's probably connected to what you just said.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in your personal mission, you feel?
Yeah, I think for me a lot is around creating equality within the playing field. None of my grandparents had any education from rural China or rural Taiwan. My father was the first and only person to go to college. You know, my mother dropped out of college. But then they moved to the US, and I ended up with no money, being raised in Silicon Valley at the rise of the internet. Like, how lucky, just based on the sheer will of my parents, having this opportunity. I ended up going to one of the best public schools in the US, went to one of the best public universities in the US, and then had all these opportunities afforded to me, right? So when I was in grad school, I moved to Bangladesh for 3 months. And I remember this vividly because I was doing research with the Grameen Bank, and I met this lady who was the same age as me at the time. I was 23. And I still actually have this picture in my house. And I took a picture because she was so proud that she had built her first mud hut for her 3 kids at 23. And I hear me, I'm like a researcher from a grad school coming in, and I realized, God, my parents or my grandparents hadn't made move. This could easily have been me. And I think it's always that, like, that opportunity, it's not anything I did. I just happened to be born here, right? So what are the opportunities that you can do? Like inequality. This is why I worked in sustainability for such a long time. And that's been kind of my mission, to kind of reduce the inequality in the world.
Great mission. And since you mentioned your parents and grandparents, about your childhood, more about that if you want to share. So what is the main learning? Can you mention they always raised the bar, so probably pushed your side of comfort zone and a lot of time. And so what else do you want to, you think shaped you from childhood?
Yeah.
And how were you as a kid?
For good and bad, I did have tiger parents. I was in, I have a black belt in karate. I played competitive tennis. I was on the golf team. I played piano very poorly, but I had to do piano. I was kind of put in so many activities as a typical kind of Asian, first generation kid in the U.S. So I think that also helps if you think about like the flexibility of me able to jump into a lot of different things. That probably comes from that. I would say that I was in a very competitive high school just by nature. We were in a very good school district. So, we have people going to the top universities all the time. And I was probably like, even though I went to UCLA, which is one of the best public schools in the US, there are people going to Harvard, Stanford. I was kind of middle of the pack in this really, I would say, this really good school. So I think just kind of the pace was a lot, I would say, higher than the average student. So that's probably why I'm also able to manage the pace, because we had so much, we had so many, AP classes, so many activities in such a competitive environment. So I think my playing field is quite high, I would say, the level based on that. So that's probably been helpful both in my career in corporate and then now in startup. I think you have to be willing to kind of jump in. And I think that's one of the things I would say about entrepreneurship is that you have to be willing to jump in and look like a fool. You have to be willing to look stupid and make mistakes. And I will honestly say not sure everybody is ready for that. Like that ability to not be able to control your image or how you react or how you look, because you're going into the unknown. Nobody's done this before, so you will mess up. And I think it's how quickly you get up after messing up and how quickly do you change. And I would say that would for the corporate world where, so much is like keeping your presence, management and like stakeholder management and kind of keeping your persona in the corporate world. In the startup world, you can't do that.
But what about picking yourself up after ups and downs? A roller coaster is something which happens a lot.
Yeah.
And especially, which I hear from on this podcast as well, many people say the first year is one of the most difficult because you have a lot of dialogue with yourself as well. Am I good enough? Should I quit? Should I not quit? What should I do? Like the first year is imposter syndrome, many things. So what do you do with that? And also, how do you pick yourself up?
I agree. I think that the first year is very much imposter syndrome, especially if you're a first-time founder. I think that there's so many unknowns every day, that first year. Like there's nobody, and I remember in my first year, I was like, I just wish someone would tell me like exactly from 0 to 1, what did they do, and like I feel like there isn't anyone, because the ones who, succeeded from 0 to 1, they're already moving on to the next thing and they can't remember the 0 to 1. And then everybody in the 0 to 1 space is struggling the same. So it's kind of like the blind leading the blind, So, and I remember that I was like, I just wish somebody would tell me what to do. So, getting through that and knowing that it's going to get better, I think you just have to have that faith that it's going to happen.
But also asking for advice, asking for help, asking for tips. Is it something, one of your habits? Are you good at asking advice? Since you mentioned you have great investors, you have a network.
I absolutely. Maybe I do it even too much sometimes. It's that I do ask for advice. But it's never too much, as people say. People love helping. Yeah, so sometimes I think one of my coaches was saying, at one point you have to kind of know within and not keep asking people for like advice, right? But I think it is a balance, right? And I think it actually comes from my corporate stakeholder management experience. Is like you ask a lot of people's advice and you start to see what are the trends. Are 3 out of 5 saying this? Is 1 like this? And then from that, you can kind of learn and build your strategy on that. So, so I'll talk to a lot of people and just like, hey, am I crazy, or is this like kind of the right direction? So, when the sustainability regulations are changing, I talked to a lot of people in a short period, from like the technology side on the AI, from regulatory. I talked to so many different people to try to figure it out, looked at so many EU documentation. And then from all of this different information, I was able to make up my mind. But I don't think I would have been able to do that without talking to all these people and getting their thoughts and helping me head the right direction.
Another founder on podcast, Katrine from Norway Brain Tech, she mentioned people started to say me, you are the expert. You actually work with that quite some time now. And she was like, that's true. I'm the expert now. And she said it's not that she stopped asking. She still does that, but it's totally different level now. Do you feel you are there or almost there?
I think it depends on where you're asking. Like if it's around like subject matter expertise around sustainability, then I trust myself. Whereas it like startup strategy, seed funding or different startup stages, then I feel like I still need a little bit of support for companies that have already been there before me.
Your leadership style. What do you feel personally? Have your leadership style changed since you become a founder, or it's still the same? You are still the same.
That's a hard question because I'm not gonna like go out and say like I'm the best leader. I think this is definitely a work in action, and I think that in the corporate life, I was probably more hands-off because you had kind of the security net and you kind of hire for subject matter experts like within their domains. So I was very kind of not a micromanager. I'm still not a micromanager now, and most of my employees would say that. And I'm very trusting, but I have my eye on everything. Even though I don't know code, I'm talking to the engineering team, like, how are you doing this, So I'm more on top of it and overseeing the business, but I do trust at the end that you're hiring people that can figure it out. So like a lot of it is like, you need to figure it out and come to me if there's issues. But I definitely have, I would say, I'm not as like laissez-faire as I was in the corporate world there.
What about the culture? Probably will be more and more relevant since you're growing, since you're scaling, and soon will be probably even faster. What kind of culture you are building and want to have in your company? We created our vision and kind of our mission, and for me it's about impact, and then at the same time it's speed. It's also simplifying things, and also taking agency, like not waiting for direction and actually trying to find the problem and solve it yourself. I have another value. These are values that I'm talking about in the company. I have something about diversity. I really think about diversity of thought, and being able to bring up issues is so important. So that's one of the things that I really care about, and I really kind of encourage the team, because I know I don't know everything. That's good as a founder, that I don't know everything, and I don't have the capacity to know everything. So I need you to come in and step in and share. That's a great mindset to have, and knowing what you don't know and really being open to others to step in. I like the thing you mentioned, or that's probably you, the investor mentioned about lasting long.
Yeah.
And I heard that again from one founder, he's a unicorn founder from Switzerland.
Okay,
and he said, I loved how he put it, we should not only work hard, we should also last long.
Yes.
And he had these great examples of, we should allow ourselves the luxury of taking breaks.
Yeah.
And you had a post about similar topic just a week ago when you came back from holidays after a beautiful time with your friends sailing, and got the opportunity to reflect after intense period. How do you make this journey sustainable for yourself?
Yeah.
How do you approach that?
Yeah, I'm still in it, so I wouldn't say that like I have all the answers on how. I am sometimes running on fumes. I'm not gonna say like I'm not a very good marathon runner yet. I just started doing 10Ks. I think it is something that I struggle with. I think from my childhood and from my tiger parents, of like a lot of kids of immigrant parents, like they don't know when to stop because it's never enough, right? So it's like, if you stop, is everything going to fall apart?
Yeah.
If you stop, are you not striving for the next A, the next grade, the next job? So it is something that I recognize in myself, is something that I need to work on, and being okay with that fear of like, okay, if I slow down, like I'm not actually slowing down the business, I'm actually creating a longer term success for myself. I'm trying, I'm picking up yoga again. I used to do so much yoga. I stopped for the last 2 years because I've been so kind of stressed and trying to move everything forward. Yeah, I also have a journal now. I have 2 small journals that I carry with me, one work related and one personal. And I actually kind of split it out because I realized when I tried to do it together, everything would just go into work. So I'm actually purposely having a journal around like well-being, so that I'm trying to do at least one nice thing a day for my well-being. That's very new though, so we'll see how that works.
I love it. Good luck with that. That's really curious to see how that goes.
Yes.
And since you mentioned the journal, another thing I was curious about, looks like you really have amazing capacity and do a lot of things. And how do you manage to prioritize, and do you have any lists? So how do you structure your work? between those all these like stakeholders and so many fires to run to? How do you structure your work?
Yeah, it's I don't have a very good one. I do feel that I've always in my corporate world I've been able to manage a lot, like have my eye overseeing a lot of different things. So it's like a lot of lists, a lot of calendar invites, a lot of remembering, a lot of organizing. But I wouldn't say I have like a solid like process down. It's just all in my head and then I'm putting it down to paper and keeping on track of everything.
You're from Silicon Valley, and that's like the really place to build things. And but you live in Norway, you build from Norway, and but you build a global company with global ambition. What you see as advantage building a global company from Norway?
Work-life balance for your employees and also yourself, and your customers are not as probably demanding in that they leave from 9 to 5. I will say that Norway is having its challenging times right now, and like, it's not meant for entrepreneurs and based on the regulation right now. So it's something, I have 3 kids, I have my family here, I want to stay, but really like hopefully the regulations will change that will enable that to happen.
My last question for today for you is when you will start a company again, or if you would be able to start Fortifai again, would you do anything differently?
Probably a lot of things differently. I think this is why they say, second-time founders, do better because they see what they would have done differently. But there's like a lot of admin things, I probably would have set up the first shareholder agreement, very differently. I would have kind of organized differently. It's hard to say. I think, of course, you would do things differently because also there's your second time around, things will have changed in the environment around you. You can't just kind of copy paste what success happened in the first one and the second one. So you're going to have to learn and adapt. But I do think that you'll be a little bit smarter. And as a second time founder, you'll probably have much more of a network than you had in the first time. And that will also help you move forward faster.
That's true. Really looking forward to follow you on your journey and good luck on your big mission and take care of yourself.
Yes,
thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for inviting me.